You're listening to The Luxury Item, the podcast on the business of luxury and the people and companies that are shaping the future of the luxury industry. Here's your host, Scott Kerr.
Despite weakening demand for designer fashion, accessories, and other personal luxury items, spending on premium travel, high-end accommodations, and exclusive experiences continue to rise worldwide. Data shows the number of high-net-worth individuals purchasing designer handbags and shoes has declined, while bookings for five-star hotels, private jets, and bespoke adventure tours continue to increase. Affluent travelers made wealthier in recent years by stock market rallies and real estate gains have splurged on their stays with abandon. Hospitality giant Hilton's recent earnings report highlight that its luxury hotel segment is outperforming more affordable options, driven by continued spending from affluent consumers. This has led Hilton to focus heavily on expanding its luxury and lifestyle portfolio. My guest on The Luxury Item is Dino Michael, Senior Vice President and Global Category Head for Hilton's luxury brands and branded residential portfolio. Bringing nearly 30 years of experience in the hospitality industry, Dino is responsible for brand strategy, management, and expansion across Waldorf Astoria Hotels and Resorts, Conrad Hotels and Resorts, LXR Hotels and Resorts, NoMad Hotels, and Signia by Hilton brands, which together encompass nearly 500 hotels, alongside a pipeline of 100 and an expanding branded residential segment. Prior to joining Hilton, Dino held senior positions at several prestigious venues in the United Kingdom, including hotel groups, branded operations, and fine dining establishments. Welcome to The Luxury Item, Dino.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me. So, you're coming up to 20 years at Hilton. You originally joined as the head of food and beverage operations for the company. You transitioned into the luxury portfolio, taking on more senior roles, then leading Waldorf Astoria and Conrad, and now expanding to overseeing all of Hilton's luxury brands. So you've been in the business for a while. So over the past 2 decades, what do you see as being the biggest shifts in luxury hospitality?
Well, that makes me sound quite old, but I'll give it a go. I've seen many trends come and go, as we all have, such as a particular region or country hitting the spotlight for a moment. Other trends are more permanent when you think about social responsibility, sustainability, provenance, and so on. But I think over the last decade, guest expectations have shifted towards fairly highly personalized, experience-driven stays. We've been talking about experiences for a while. The modern luxury traveler values, authenticity, that true sense of place over traditional opulence, locally inspired architecture, work of regional artists, immersing guests in that culture that they crave, and really creating, I think, experiences that are meaningful and memorable. And then when you look at the slightly younger affluent traveler, they're really prioritizing transformative experiences, over comfort even. And we have programs like our collection brand LXR has The Pursuit of Adventure. Conrad has 135 that reflects this trend. So, if you've got 1, 3, or 5 hours spare, we'll offer you a curated local excursion, sparks curiosity, celebrates culture, and create stories that hopefully our guests will relive and repeat for years. And even our personal concierge teams at Waldorf Astoria, they take great pride in being able to curate highly personalized itineraries. So I think modern luxury travel today is defined by those emotional and cultural resonances, spaces, experiences, and programs that really are designed to make you feel unmistakably local. And that leaves a lasting impression, I think.
You oversee a portfolio of distinct Hilton luxury brands, each targeting specific guest profiles and experiences, from iconic urban hotels like the Conrad and historic landmarks like the Waldorf Astoria Hotels with a creative urban edge like NoMad. Your approach is that each brand is cultivated with its own story, design ethos, and service philosophy, avoiding this one-size-fits-all mentality. But does Hilton have a specific strategic pillars that drive its overarching luxury strategy?
Look, maintaining unique identities for our portfolio, obviously is paramount. And that has to align with our broader vision that requires, obviously, that strategic, nuanced approach. So each brand, as you said, has its distinct personality. We target a specific segment of the market. So obviously Waldorf Astoria represents timeless elegance. Conrad embodies that bold, contemporary luxury. And LXR, as a collection brand, really celebrates the independence, those one-of-a-kind properties. And we safeguard I think those identities through clear brand pillars. We define each brand's essence, its voice, its target audience, and that really makes sure that the experiences are tailored, to that design. We call it a design target guest. So no matter what your walk of life, the moment you step over the threshold of one of our hotels, we will make you feel like that design guest, how we've curated the experience, the service philosophy, what I would call the hardware and the software of each brand. So the moment you cross over, we will make you feel that like that guest, whether you're here for a day or week, or whether that is how you live your life. Um, and then when you think about the core Hilton values, you just step above the brand, even the category, and our values that revolve around hospitality, innovation, making sure that we have responsible operation woven into each brand. And that, I think, fosters autonomy and collaboration. So you thrive individually, but you've got the strength of our luxury portfolio above the top of that.
If you look at the luxury hospitality industry now, the wealthiest households continue to have a ravenous appetite to explore the world and have real luxury experiences. Higher room rates have done little to dull the demand for luxury hotels and resorts, which is why Hilton has been doubling down in the luxury space. All the hotel brands in your portfolio are specifically targeting ultra high net worth individuals, top business executives, and luxury leisure travelers. But Hilton isn't the only hotel group aggressively pursuing global expansion of its luxury brands. And we're also seeing independent and emerging luxury hotel brands are challenging the established players. So with companies like Hilton under immense pressure to continually prove value proposition, are you finding it harder to craft these unique, consistent, and differentiated, culturally rich experiences?
I always say I have, one of the greatest and hardest jobs in the world. The competition is great. It keeps us on our toes. And you're right. The space is growing. The challenges are increasing, both the traditional brands and new entrants. And I think, from our point of view, luxury hospitality, it's about combining that personalization, the authentic connection, the exclusive offerings. We're all chasing the same thing. And I think the way we look at it is, what can we do and what do we focus on and what can we really excel at? We're all talking to the same customers. We're all getting the same answers. And I think what we need to do is curate journeys that really resonate deeply with our guests. They really want to immerse themselves in the culture. Trust is a huge thing. Today's travelers are discerning. They're kind of a little bit fatigued of the AI generated itineraries. They're seeing what's popular on social media. And I think that trust for our brands is paramount. They want to know that we have the insider knowledge. We're not sending them somewhere that's for the masses. That has, as you know, you queue to look at that beautiful sunset in Santorini, for example. You've got the blue dome. You turn around over your shoulder, and there's a queue of 50 people. So when you think about our signature programs, as I said, like Conrad 135, that really illustrates this approach. Inspired by Baron Hilton, Conrad Hilton's son, who created the brand, his pioneering spirit. These curated 1, 3, 5 hour experiences, they'll highlight local culture, a little bit of adventure, and, also bring home that unique essence of each property. Our Conrad in Punta Mita, for example, has a beautiful tequila tasting experience where we'll take you through a culinary journey, tasting journey of tequila mezcal. Really, it's educational, which is great. Our guests leave feeling that they've learned something locally, they've enjoyed it. So, by anticipating these preferences, I think, and involving our offerings, we hope to continue to deliver these experiences, and they feel effortless. They should feel effortless, genuine, and most of all, I think, deeply personal, because true luxury really does still remain with authentic human connection.
And one of the experiences you seem to be leading the way on is the idea of sleep. That Hilton's luxury segment adopted this sleep as the new status symbol, connecting emotional well-being and physical restoration to the essence of high-end hospitality. Your own trends report highlighted quality sleep as a top priority for luxury travelers. Has sleep tourism really been a big differentiator for Hilton?
Not only a differentiator, but at our core, if you think about what we're offering across all of our 25 brands, is a really good night's sleep. I mean, look, it is the cornerstone of our approach to wellness. It seems a little obvious, but I think so many people don't look at it the same way. When you think about, programs that we've put into place, we have a sleep to wake ritual at the Conrad Singapore Orchard, the celestial circadian ritual at the Arizona Biltmore, which is part of our LXR collection brand. And I think for us, we look at science-backed, data, locally inspired wellness offerings, to have that healthy tension. We want our guests to rest and rejuvenate. Sleep isn't really a commodity anymore. It's a real differentiator. It signals our attention to detailed care, emotional well-being. When you think about the ergonomics of designing a bedroom, how many times have you been in a room where you can't sleep because there's that small blinking light or there's light creep coming from the door? Blackout blinds really aren't blackout. Thinking about that highly curated, arrival kit. So we should know whether you've come in off a red eye or you've landed late, landed early. So what's the right amenity in your room? Is it chamomile tea to help you sleep? Or is it a stronger caffeine to help you power through the day so you can get your restful night later on?
I want to talk about the Waldorf Astoria Hotels and Resorts. So over the past year, Waldorf Astoria Hotels and Resorts has undergone one of its most active and transformational periods in recent history. Major developments include landmark reopenings, global expansion, and new partnerships. The highlight being the reopening of the crown jewel Waldorf Astoria here in New York after an 8-year, $2 billion restoration. The project transformed the 1931 Art Deco icon into a hybrid hotel residence with 375 guest rooms and 372 luxury condominiums, while meticulously restoring historic spaces such as the Grand Ballroom, Peacock Alley, and the Silver Corridor. It's been said that it marks the beginning of, quote unquote, a new era of quiet grandeur for Waldorf Astoria. Your history with the Waldorf Astoria brand began in 2018 when you were the global brand head there. Can you explain the new vision and brand strategy?
You'll have to forgive me for being a pure brand guy now, but the way the way we look at Waldorf Astoria New York, it's our beacon of timeless elegance. As everybody knows, or many people know, Conrad Hilton described it as the greatest of them all. He wrote it on the back of a postcard. I guess that was a very early version of what we would call manifesting now. And that North Star, I think, really guides every new Waldorf Astoria around the world. Every property pays tribute to the original. It informs our history, but allows us to reinterpret for the future. And when you think we closed the hotel for restoration in early 2017, we were able back then to gently tilt the spotlight, if you remember, to the West Coast when we launched Waldorf Astoria Beverly Hills, which I think was the beginning of the brand's transformation. And we've been working on what it meant to be a Waldorf Astoria beyond New York for several years, kind of leading up to that Los Angeles opening. And at that point, we had 15 properties in the portfolio against almost 40 today. And I think we wanted to ensure, how do you pay tribute to the original, but make sure that each new hotel is primarily centered on its destination. So I guess in simple terms, a Waldorf Astoria for London versus a Waldorf Astoria in London.
Right.
So each hotel across the globe features two nods back to the original, a clock. So the clock, the original clock in Peacock Alley is at the axis of the hotel. It's at the natural central point. It's where you would gravitate to meet. It's where you'd, I guess, navigate from. So every Waldorf Astoria in the world has a clock, something that nods to that, origin. So whether it's our Millery sphere at the Waldorf Astoria Amsterdam, again, a nod to not only New York, but the country's, Dutch naval tradition, or it's a beautiful hand-carved sundial in the Waldorf Astoria Maldives that you come across the moment you enter into, I guess, the central area of the resort. So again, you remind yourselves of our origin. And then we have a Peacock Alley, or a tribute to Peacock Alley. So in some cases, it's a lounge, a terrace, but it's our most welcoming part of our property. So we wanted to make sure the brand personality also reflected that. So we overhauled it to reflect the service philosophy, making sure that we not only meet the needs of today's travelers, but also the trends we talked about earlier. And I think now, having New York come back, relaunched, restored, that sets, our new era for how we interpret luxury globally. It's relevant, it's locally resonates locally. and it's grounded in what we would call timeless elegance. And when you think about, that vision coming to life with our new openings, next couple of years, we've got London, Kuala Lumpur, Sydney, Tokyo, Hanoi, Jakarta, Jaipur, all coming to life, all bringing, something new to their cities, but respecting, I guess, the fact that we have New York as this wonderful origin story.
And from a design standpoint, the new Waldorf Astoria New York is a collaboration among Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill for architecture, and they're responsible for One World Trade Center. Renowned Paris-based Pierre-Yves Rochon leading the hotel interior design, and Jean-Louis Daigneault for the building residences. What story did you want the design to tell?
I took certainly, as many of us did, our responsibility for New York very seriously. We know what it means to, the country and New Yorkers. I come across so many people who have a Waldorf Astoria New York story to tell. It's incredible. I had my prom there. I got married there. There was one gentleman whose father used to sell carpets at one point, I think decades ago, at the hotel. So everybody has this wonderful history, and we wanted to be really respectful of that. So, in partnership with obviously the landmarked areas which you know and love, we felt it was, appropriate to take those back to their original grandeur, almost beyond their grandeur. So when you think about all the public spaces, the Circle of Life mosaic on the Park Avenue entrance, the silver corridor that, I've watched over the years, people painstakingly cleaning those. We're talking Q-tip restoration. My favorite room, which is the Basildon room, which was literally from a stately home in the UK, where the owner sold it piecemeal, and whoever bought part of his stately home, he shipped it wherever you wanted. So I think the unified vision was the public areas had to retain their grandeur, their magic. And I think particularly now when you think about the trends around nostalgia and what I would call, pardon the pun, the clamor for glamour, people want to feel amazing when they go out. They want to feel like they've arrived. So I think there was this combined ambition to make sure that Art Deco grandeur, the magic was retained. Once you get, I think, into the residential and, hotel product, we could start again, which was great. You take it back to the concrete, literally, and we were able to reformat, redesign, and re-engineer the entire building. So now, from, if you remember, a 1,400 room plus hotel product, we now have a very elegant residential and hotel piece. So we created 2 new porte cocheres. So you could arrive discreetly, elegantly, still want to come on Park Avenue, great, or Lexington, but now you have 2 very quiet arrivals. The efficiencies, the collaboration between the 2 components to make sure that our team members can traverse quickly, efficiently through the building. There's no crossover. The guests can move within their spaces. We were able to, create a brand new bedroom product. Again, still retains its Art Deco intent, but with all the modernity, and technology you need for a luxury hotel, a luxury experience. Similarly, with the residential side, we were able to create residential amenities that surpassed almost everything in the city. But you've got this beautiful integration of, Pierre-Yves' intent and Jean-Louis' intent, but whilst different, having harmony. But I think it's the way that now those two segments of the building live very comfortably side by side is what makes the hotel so special.
And that's why Waldorf Astoria has reemerged as Hilton's most visible embodiment of ultra-luxury, a brand now rooted in heritage and artistry and human-centered design. But does that idea of quiet grandeur appeal to the next generation of luxury travelers?
Oh, I think so. If you look at the trends now, when you look at, obviously everyone's calling it quiet luxury, or as we would say, hospitality. We're seeing a real move away from labels, that kind of garish label-driven sentiment. Look at what I'm wearing. There's more of a if you know sentiment. Luxury travelers today, they're very discerning. They can spot inauthenticity instantly. Storytelling has to be earned. not manufactured. And that really comes from truth, whether that's the brand's heritage, design philosophy, or the cultural context of the destination. And when you think about the Waldorf Astoria and how its legacy spans over a century, each new property even brings that fresh interpretation. But we keep it rooted in timeless service. That's not to say white glove or overly formal, but again, respectful, elegant, subtle, and we want to have those iconic moments. We want to make sure that our service is intuitive. We spend an awful lot of time with our team members talking to them about intuitive service. Read the human cues, look at your environment, read the guest's intent. So whether that's, a Waldorf Astoria or LXR, which by contrast celebrates the individuality of each property, where we uncover and amplify the stories already inherent in the locale. I think our role primarily is to create those meaningful, authentic experiences that really connect our guests to the destinations. Again, and I said this over and over, in ways that they will remember for a lifetime and repeat for a lifetime.
Last year, Hilton introduced NoMad Hotels into the luxury portfolio. Hilton acquired the majority controlling interest for NoMad Hotels for a pretty inexpensive price of about $56 million. Chris Nassetta, Hilton's president and CEO, said, NoMad is in a crowded space, a space that we have wanted to be in for a while. It was pretty well known despite being only one hotel, and it has a brand ethos that we wanted to scale up. What was attractive about NoMad as a strategic investment for the luxury portfolio? What gap did it fill in the portfolio?
Yeah, we're always looking at white spaces, particularly when you think about where we were at that point. Obviously, Waldorf Astoria is a classic, elegant luxury brand. Conrad, with its modernity, LXR, with its independent, one-of-a-kind luxury properties. And then you have our wonderful lifestyle brands like Canopy and Motto. But in that kind of luxury lifestyle space that sits in the center, it was a gap for us. So NoMad offered a strong entry into that segment, appealing to travelers who want design forward, culturally connected, and really socially vibrant hotels. It has a distinct identity. It's stylish, creative, urbane, and I think it complemented where we were. And by acquiring that majority interest in Sodell, the creators of NoMad, that's allowed us to scale it while using and partnering with Sodell, keeping their creative team, their energy, their dynamism, and they'll continue to lead design and operations. And I think combined with our development, distribution, and operational scale, that's a perfect match. And I think looking ahead, we see up to 100 NoMad properties worldwide, and we recently announced, obviously, Detroit and Singapore. And then we have some branded residential component in Wynwood, Miami. So that brand is off to a great start.
In Hilton's 2026 trend report, you identify a profound shift in how and why people travel. The report concludes that 2026 will be defined by intentionally, emotionally driven travel, where the why matters more than the where. The core theme reflects travelers' desire to connect travel with purpose, emotion, and personal meaning rather than status or social display. We're way beyond the revenge travel phase right now. What do you think the reason why travelers are pivoting from escapism to emotional alignment?
I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. They are shifting from escapism to emotional alignment because I think experiences, they just hold more value than status. Again, I think there's a self-confidence growing about, I know what I want, I know what I'm doing. And our trends report highlights that purposeful travel. Our guests want enrichment, on an emotional level, on a cultural level. I think they're beyond just taking that one shot and moving on. They want to really stick around, spend time, really get to understand the destination or the particular event that they're attending. Whether it's our immersive LXR adventures, wellness-focused Conrad programs, our hotels hopefully meet that desire for intentionality and its personal meaning. And I think our guests are relying more on our team members. Trust is becoming critical when they turn to us for advice. And as I said earlier, the AI-generated itineraries are just sending to the most popular destinations, the most popular beaches, the most popular, types of thing to do. And it's driving so many people. There's a little bit of fatigue. So, and it's getting harder, once something is well known, I think, social media attaches to it. And what was unique is now overwhelmed. So trying to find that thing that is away from the masses and the queues is really critical. And I think the escapism is intrinsically linked to that. You can't escape to somewhere that has 1,000 people on the beach.
Hilton's primary model is asset light, focusing on branding, franchising, and management contracts. It's become a dominant strategy in the global hotel industry. I imagine your luxury development partners and owners have varied priorities, perhaps legacy in APAC, return on investment in Western markets. How do you go about negotiating brand standards, investment levels, and operational practices, sometimes with owners and developers who have different long-term visions?
Great question. I mean, luxury is a commitment wherever you are in the world. And I think given the international mix of our guests, their needs are broadly the same, whether you're in North America or China or Southeast Asia. And look, we may have cultural nuances where we interpret our standards in a slightly different way, or we may make, operational changes when you think about, a large resort. Clearly, when you think about rituals that you can have in place at a 50-key all-villa resort that would differ from a 500-key, event hotel. I think for us, as long as the intent is the same, how it's delivered matters less. So for us, there is a baseline of standards. There is a baseline of quality that we won't go below. And we work with our owners. As you said, some of them are looking for an exit in a few years. Others, this is a generational hold for children and grandchildren. But the baseline is the same. And I think that quality level doesn't differ. And our owners understand that. We spend a lot of time with our owners at the outset, because most of our ownership groups are long-term investors. Even in those markets where they are looking for a return in a shorter time frame, I think the investment is the same. And it's our job, the way my team is structured, we have regional specialists across the Americas, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific. It's their job to translate, standards and operational practices that make sense regionally and culturally. So I don't think it's necessarily a problem in my category, but it's something that obviously when it comes to return on investment, we look at that for all of our owners, no matter where you are in the world.
And these days, hospitality is less about aesthetics or amenities, and we talked about that. It's about the human experience where company culture shapes how guests feel cared for and how teams deliver consistent, heartfelt service every day. Do you believe culture is the backbone of the guest experience, team excellence, and brand identity?
It will always be the people. As I say, it's always the software, not the hardware. And if I just think about myself personally, if I think back to any one of my personal trips or business trips, it's the team that made the difference. If you talk to my family, I have 3 sons. And when we talk about, our vacations as a family, they will always reference someone who did something when we're away. And I think it's those genuine acts that I get the most satisfaction from when I receive a guest letter. And when you foster that culture of collaboration, and that's central to Hilton, not just luxury. We encourage our teams to think creatively, challenge the norms, we empower them, share ideas regardless of experience level, give everyone a voice, no matter how junior they are. And we have this wonderful duality, I think, with our brands where we successfully dovetail our Hilton culture and core values with each brand's individual pillars. And I think our teams are our greatest asset. We invest in training development as everyone does, I think, but you have to equip them to innovate and deliver that service, be intuitive. We talk a lot about social cues. I mean, the example I always give is when a car pulls up and a guest, gets out of the car, watch their behavior. If they walk to the back of the car, they want to get their luggage. Just take a step back, give them a moment. if they get out of the car and they walk straight to you, to front desk to be greeted, then it can be a little bit more hands-on. They want things to be taken care of them. So we spend a lot of time talking to our team members about that. And we have programs like Thrive Sabbatical and Thrive Reset, which allows team members to pursue personal professional growth, take some paid time off and grants to live or give a dream. And I think this approach really strengthens our workplace culture. It drives retention. I think we've got half the industry average, which we're really proud of. I think, again, we talk about our guest experiences. We start a lot of our team meetings internally by sharing a guest story. And I think for the fourth time, we've been named #1 best company to work for in the US by Great Place to Work and Fortune. So I think, exceptional hospitality, begins and ends with our people.
To help stay relevant in the fiercely competitive luxury market, many companies are expanding beyond products and services into offering emotionally resonant, immersive experiences. Luxury retailers are entering into the hospitality space through hotels and restaurants and private clubs, while hospitality brands are launching luxury product lines that carry their brand into customers' homes. In a market where loyalty is increasingly linked to emotional connection, luxury brands are striving to engage customers in more meaningful and lasting ways. Luxury hospitality excels at delivering curated, high-touch experiences. What does it take to lead in an evolving experiential sector like luxury hospitality?
Well, I think we thrive on curated, high-touch experiences, that resonate. I think they do need a balance, design, service, whether it's culinary innovation or immersive programming. And, we exemplify this through, wellness rituals, Conrad or cultural excursions at LXR, and a lot of storytelling, as you can imagine, at Waldorf Astoria. But I think, delivering that, needs foresight, a huge amount of attention to detail, and a commitment to being, authentic. So, with every interaction, every moment, you've got to reinforce a guest sense of purpose, their belonging, their delight. And I think in this evolving experiential sector, I think our leadership is about anticipating, empowering our teams, and crafting genuine experiences. And there's a balance, and I think when you talk about relationships and brands and products, the pendulum tends to swing, right? So we look at it in multiple ways, whether it's, brand partnerships that align with our brand's philosophy. I always say that, it used to be the case that when you went to a luxury hotel, a few decades ago, it was better than home. That is almost impossible now. You have to meet our guests at home. So they have the high quality finishes, furnishings, the amenities, the linens. So, when you look at our partnership with ESOP, our bathroom amenity at Waldorf Astoria, or our category partnership with Fretté Linen, this isn't a treat for our guests. This is their way of life. This is how they live. So we're meeting them, at home at the same time. So, and then you get a little bit more granular when you look at the Squagia partnership we have at the Waldorf Astoria New York, where we developed a unique scent. You want that emotional recognition. And again, guests can purchase the scent, whether it's through candle or spray. They can take that memory home. That's what you want. Or whether you get a little bit more local and you have locally made tote bags at some of our Conrad resorts that support local communities. And I think right now, as I said, the pendulum swings. We're seeing a trend for nostalgic hotel branded apparel. Guests want to take a little bit of that home, have some fun. Luxury certainly becoming more playful. Culinary partnerships. Again, we don't necessarily have a one size fits all. We look at the market dynamic. We look at what's relevant for that destination. We just announced a few weeks back our culinary partnership at Waldorf Astoria London Admiralty Arch. We have Claire Smith, who's a revered chef on the London dining scene, who will lead our signature restaurant. And then we have Danielle Boulud coming back with Cafe Boulud on the rooftop. And for us, that is about really making a statement of intent around our partners and making sure our guests see that. And again, seeing that collaboration between a hotel brand and two culinary giants, I think is incredible.
So, Dino, my final question is the luxury item question, which I ask all my guests. So if you were stranded on a deserted island and you could only have one single luxury item with you, what would that luxury item be? It can't be any form of air or water transportation to get you off that island, or anything that requires mobile service, so you can call your three sons or anybody to help to get you off that island. It's just you on this lonely island by yourself. What would the one single luxury item you would like to have with you?
So, on the basis that I can't escape, uh, I would actually say, and it's the one thing, fun enough, I can't travel with because of its size. I wish I could take my pillow with me. It's the one thing that stops me getting a good night's sleep. And I think if I can have a good night's sleep, I can do anything. I'm ready for the day. I would say my pillow.
Dino Michael, Senior Vice President and Global Category Head of Luxury Brands at Hilton. Thank you so much for joining me on The Luxury Item.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
That's it for this episode of the Luxury Item Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this useful and entertaining, I would be really grateful if you can share it with a friend or colleague. I would love it if you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other listeners find us. The Luxury Item Podcast is a production of Silvertone Consulting. I'm your host, Scott Kerr. Until next time.